Tuesday, and welcome to the MSL Lead Chronicles. It's a podcast on a mission in medical affairs and leadership. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy, Chad Fellers, we're going to have casual talk about important topics and challenges in leadership. And we are so glad you're here. Stay tuned.
So welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm one of your hosts, Chad Fellers, joined by my sidekick, Mary Morton. Mary, you are looking great today, sporting your MSL Society shirt, Superwoman.
Thank you. It's my favorite of all the MSL Society shirts. Wink, wink. When you guys are designing them for this year's conference, I love this one.
That's right. That's coming up soon. I'm sure it's going to be full of great content like it always is. I think it's going to be in Miami this year. It'll be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So anyway, great
Tracy
shirts.
and I are going.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Fantastic. Mary, we got some great things to talk about this week. We got a lot to catch up on though, I think first. I mean, a lot of things have happened over the past couple of weeks since we last had our podcast. Let's start. You just got back from California. How was that?
It was awesome.
Other than the delays, I think you had the flights to and from.
Yeah, but I really can't complain about it. I was hanging out with my son, who was happy to hang out with me.
I love it.
Yeah, and I got to see my daughter, who I haven't seen in several weeks. So she's out there killing being an adult.
Isn't it fun to see your kids grow up and start being able to take care of their own business? I think that's pretty cool. That means you did something right, Mary. Either that or they read and watched a lot of YouTube maybe and figured out how to do things themselves. I'm not real sure.
I think it's probably a little bit of both.
Maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So you went to California. Let's see. Last week, I actually started a new role with a new company, which I'm really excited about. Loved the opportunity to work alongside my former team, but I am really excited about this new role, getting to leverage what I call my neurodivergence a little bit more in official capacity. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to learn from others on how to be successful in more of a strategy-focused role. So making the shift a little bit from field leadership, but really excited about that. So that's gotten underway as well. And I bought a new truck. I think that was another thing. Leaving the field, I had to get a new vehicle.
It's a beautiful, beautiful shade of burnt orange.
I wish you would not have said burnt orange. It is an orange truck for the listeners out there. It is a 2016 Toyota Tacoma that I found on Facebook Marketplace. Actually had to go all the way to Nashville to find it, but it was worth the drive. The challenge of it is, though, I sound like an 18-year-old with the muffler right now. I think I'm ready to go to Cruise Sonic or to go to Walmart or something like that as well, too. You will hear me a mile away. Hopefully that will get fixed here soon. So, but it's been a lot of fun. So with that, Mary, I know that our listeners love hearing about our personal stuff that's going on, but that's not the only reason that they join as well too. We want to be able to get into some good topics and would love to hear what your thoughts on kicking us off today.
Well, awesome. So today's topic has probably been one of the most requested topics that we've had. And the context around the different requests have kind of been all over the place. But with respect to this particular topic we're covering, I could not think of anybody better to interview around these topics than our very own Chad Fellers, because this actually kind of flows into one of your passion areas in the industry, and that is insights. So for all you lucky listeners, I managed to persuade Chad into being the interviewee this week. So I'm excited about all of the questions that I've gotten that I'm going to run past you, and hopefully you can provide answers to the people in our MSL Lead community. And I do have a few of my own that I've set aside too. They're just my own curiosity.
I love it. This is one of my favorite topics. You know that, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And while I may not have all the answers, I certainly don't have all the answers. Hopefully, this will be just kind of a launching pad for many to think about the way they want to approach insights, to really be able to drive the value or communicate the value of medical affairs, specifically with the medical affairs that are in the field, how we are really making the impact within the industry, specifically with our own companies too. So let's get into it.
All right. Well, what? Why don't
Takeaways. I guess I need
why don't you
takeaways,
handle the
right?
takeaways?
Wow. Okay. For insights, we'll go with three. The first one is, you are not alone. You're not alone in this challenge of understanding insights, where they go, what they look like, what the impact of them are. Number two, be curious. We always talk about that. The number one trait that really, I think that I look for and others look for in a great field employee, I would even say within medical affairs in general, is someone that is curious. Don't be afraid to ask for help and advice from your MSL leadership community that we have here at MSL Lead Chronicles. And then three, we must prioritize process improvement of gathering, reporting, and communicating insights. It's not just one, it really is, how do we make this a full 360? So those are my takeaways today.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so we're going to just get right into it. So I have my list of questions over here, and some of them, again, like you just said, are the takeaways. Some people might recognize these because they may have been the person who asked it, or they may be asking themselves these questions. So here's the first one. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is sort of a black hole or black box question, as they kind of call them. We are given clear direction from our field director on what medical strategy wants from us and what insights qualify as meaningful. I just wish I knew what happens with the information after I enter it into Viva. So the question really being, it's really more of like a little bit of a vent, but what would you maybe suggest to someone who wants more information about where does all this stuff go and how do I know it's actually making a difference?
It's a great question, and it's not an easy problem to solve. I think that with the advancements that have happened within AI and some of those, you see a lot of different vendors and platforms that are out there to help support and collate some of this information. I would say number one, do you have someone within field medical affairs, not within field medical, it could be, but someone that's analyzing the insights, that's collating, and then even creating reports? That would be one of the first things to better understand, like what's happening beyond these. I'm entering these in, I'm not hearing any feedback. And I think that that's a really consistent conversation that field medical has. And let's talk about the positives and the negatives that happen when you're not able to understand what's going on with this. Number one, when you record an insight, say that insight comes up multiple times in conversations with all of your travel, all of your KOLs that you're interacting with. Do you continue to log those, right? I mean, some people think insights have to be unique. Some think that we need to be able to power those. What is the philosophy of your organization? If you don't understand what's happening to the insights, in my experience, the MSLs really don't want to continue to ask the same question or log the same information because it's nothing new. And so I think it's how we think about insights, number one. So I think that's one thing, understanding who the person is that's evaluating those, and then even asking the question, what's the impact of these? If those questions haven't been asked, which I'm sure in many ways that they have, I think part of identifying challenges as much as creating solutions as well too. And so I think that could be another solution is, hey, I would love to facilitate conversations maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis on what we've learned from insights so that we can share with one another. Maybe it makes us ask the same types of questions, et cetera. So I think knowing who, asking the question to leadership, identifying someone that is actually looking at these, and then coordinating times to be able to share those with one another, I think are essential to this. So I think that that's the best way really to approach, just to understand the challenges that there may be. Maybe you'll find out that it's in a reporting issue, maybe it's a time issue, et cetera. But I am 100% convinced that insights really are the currency of medical affairs strategy, or within medical affairs, period. So how do we elevate those? And that would be my approach to doing that.
Okay, awesome. And that actually, your answer actually kind of bled into a question that I had, and we'll get to it later because I want to make sure I stay with the listeners' questions, and then we'll go to the ones that I kind of thought of. Perfect. And you may address all of them. So, okay, here's the next one. So this is actually more of a metrics question. We are expected to hit a certain number of interactions each month. And I feel like chasing this metric is interfering with the quality I'm trying to achieve. So, I hate to overanalyze the question, but I think what I'm hearing is I'm so worried about making sure I get my 40 this month that I'm not taking that time to dig in to feel like I'm actually getting something of value to provide back to in-house medical. So
I think it's a twofold problem. I think the first problem is companies rely heavily on quantitative metrics as in interactions, the number of interactions, because there's a lack of reporting tools that are available to be able to communicate the value. So I think reporting is certainly an issue. So we have to get better in what it is that we communicate. Absolutely, numbers are essential. You want to be able to quantify qualitative information. But when you're focused on the metric of just interactions, that's oftentimes because that's the easiest thing to track. And we've got to get better at others. And there's systems to be able to do that. We can talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
I would say from the metric question is, what additional metrics can you add to that, or can even propose? One of the things that I think is essential to make sure that MSL teams are on strategy, et cetera, is to expect that there should be one insight that comes from each interaction, right? So that's aligned to medical affairs strategy. The challenge with that is, and there's some caveats, right? So you could be at a congress where you're just seeing somebody in the hallway, and you talk briefly about that. You may not have a time to get into a specific question, and so maybe you don't count every one-to-one. Maybe you have a group presentation where you can only interact with the entire group, and so when you count every single one of those, you won't have an insight from each one of the audience members. And so set a number. So one of the teams that I've worked alongside, we proposed 80% of the interactions must have a key insight question that's addressed or asked, and then a response loaded in. So then we can quantify qualitative information to be able to give a bigger picture of how our medical affairs strategy is doing, to be able to provide that picture to not only our internal leadership, but then also our cross-functional stakeholders. So I would propose adding a qualitative metric.
You know, when you first started when you first started talking about this, and you said, well, I think we probably need to consider adding a metric. It was before you said qualitative. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can just hear every MSL going, no, don't add another metric, but qualitative metric.
We want to quantify the qualitative information.
That's the trick though, right?
Yes, it is. It is.
And
it goes back to that initial question, right? How are you defining an insight as a company? And that has to be clearly communicated, or your teams are going to miss the mark of what you want. I mean, I think we probably know that from just our conversations with our significant others, our kids, et cetera. If we're not setting clear expectations of what we're looking for, how can we expect them to hit the mark? I mean, it's just, we have to be clear with that.
Yeah. So like whenever I tell Liam he needs to go clean his room, then, it's his judgment of what that means. I mean, does it mean I have to clean my toilet? Does it mean I have to make my bed?
Owen just throws his clothes in his closet and shuts the door. I mean, is that really cleaning a room, or is that just kind of pushing it aside to get it out of view? I don't really know, right? So,
Yeah. So with
yeah,
Liam, I have to say, I have to give them the list.
yeah.
Clean your room, which is wipe your sink, clean your toilet, dust your shelves. Yeah.
Sounds like key performance indicators right there, Mary. I'm not real sure.
Yes. Yes. And I want him to keep track of how many shelves he cleans, because he has a requirement to clean 5 shelves.
Oh,
If he
okay.
only cleans 3, he gets written up. He's going to be on a pip.
Oh, I
Uh,
love it. I love
just
it. Oh,
see all the stuff I'm learning from other leaders.
that's right.
Okay. All right. So I'll get to the next one. And
Let's
this
do it.
is an interesting one. And I don't know that it's actually necessarily the same everywhere, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on what it should be. But it's a quick question. Who decides which insights are impactful?
The short answer is leadership within the therapeutic area ultimately makes the decision as far as what's impactful for that, as far as what moves forward. I think what's needed, though, is what kind of insights are we looking for? If you have a traditionally smaller team, or at least in my experience, you can bring the entire field medical, because they're extension of the headquarter medical affairs. That's the intent behind having field medical. If we all serve together, bring the entire team together to be able to share all of the learnings and findings, and then have shared decision making as far as what do we think might be the next step to do this. Ultimately, there's an owner of it, and I would say that would be the therapeutic director, the medical director, a part of it, because they help shape the strategy. But the role of field medical is to help inform that, and we have brilliant people. So what are ways we can bring them into the fold to be able to share their ideas? Doesn't mean that that's where we go, but at least we get more ideas on the table to make sure we are making the biggest impact that we can.
So I'm going to kind of add on something to this. Actually, I'm not, because I realize this actually kind of flows into the next question.
Okay.
So I'm not going to steal this person's thunder but because I think it kind of goes together. But so this person's question was, I'm a new MSL director, and I'm a little frustrated about complaints from medical strategy that we aren't bringing the right insights. But I also think they haven't really given us clear objectives. As a new manager, I'm still feeling my way through and trying to get comfortable in my role. How can I diplomatically explain that we aren't really given clear direction for what they want? And so I kind of compared this to if you have a personal shopper and you send them out and say, go buy me a new suit. And you don't tell the personal shopper what color, what size, what style, how many buttons, what kind of cut. And then they just have to keep coming back with new suits for you. And you're like, no, not that. Try again. But, you're not giving that person direction on what kind of suit you want. So, me, I like metaphors. So how can this person like diplomatically have that conversation with and push down their frustration?
I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I think sometimes we make things too complicated. I think it goes back to even what Ryan said in our previous podcast about keeping things simple. And what I would say to keep it simple is, first, you have to disarm any kind of potential defensiveness. It would be, hey, so-and-so, I want you to know how excited I am about being the new MSL director. And I know one of the priorities of mine is to make sure that we are bringing back impactful insights that are going to really shape the future of where we go as a medical affairs organization. One of the things I need you to help me understand is what in your mind are you looking for to really make sure that the things that I am directing my team to do, they have a clear understanding of that. That way we can make sure we're not wasting any of their time or energy. We're providing value as much as possible. So can you help me understand? I have a few ideas, but I would love to hear your feedback first. Just asking the question, right? I think is the first thing with that. It does go
And I
back.
think it was very disarming
Yes.
the way that you started that out.
Well, here's what happens, Mary. I mean, how many times if I'm given an assignment or given direction as far as of what to go do, but not shared what is needed to be done, and I do it multiple times and I keep being told this isn't it, that's going to just lead to frustration. And so how is that going to, you think about it compounding over time, and then how are you going to respond when, I mean, it's going to shape every interaction that you have with that other coworker, right? So asking the questions, being curious, going back to the curiosity, because we really are, and assuming positive intent, we are all on the same team. So how do we make sure we're walking together in lockstep? The reality is the medical director in this scenario could be going through 8 million different things that we have no idea about. And so the last thing on their mind, potentially, maybe they were in MSL in the past. So they thought they know how to do this. It's like clockwork. Why do I need to even communicate this to others? But the reality is you have to kind of set those expectations. And so simply asking the question will help bring somebody back in, and you can help be solution oriented. So that's what I would do.
I think that's great. So if that was your question, I hope you picked up what I was putting down. I wanted to kind of, so there was a white paper that MAPS put out last year, is like October, November timeframe, around insights. And it was done in collaboration with Within3. And I'd love to credit all the collaborators on this, but there was like 20 or 30 of them, and I'm sure I would leave one out.
You know who you are. You know who you are.
Yes, you know who you are.
You're listening to us, so thanks for that.
They said in the piece, it says, the central question seems to be, now we have data. What do we do with it? And I thought this was really, oh gosh, I can't say insightful, interesting. The fact is, all the hard work that goes into generating insights, data, represents not the finish line, but it's the starting line. I guess depends on your perspective. So I thought that was kind of an interesting statement. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it gives you makes you pause to think about kind of what it is that they're trying to say. So starting line is ultimately, is this insight something that confirms my medical strategy, or this insight that was brought back, does it make me need to alter our medical strategy, right? So that's really kind of the first questions I think that should be asked is what I'm bringing back, how is it aligned with strategy? Is it confirming it, or is it saying we need to shift, and why do we need to shift? I think that's, again, when we talk about the currency of medical affairs, it's not a market survey. A market survey could be sent out by anybody saying, okay, what is your response? And they could say, well, my response is for this drug is second line therapy. Okay, that's great to know the positioning of it. MSLs could say an insight would be, this is second line therapy because the dosing administration or the safety and tolerability, those types of things. And then you start saying, okay, hey, we asked this question 100 times across the US, and here is what we found. We found that 60% said it was second line therapy. Now, the reason why behind that is 40% said it was because of dosing and efficacy, or it was the safety administration, whatever that might be. And so then all of a sudden you have a clear understanding of where do we need to focus our attention? Is there new data that we need to, are there data gaps that we need to help clarify, to help reassure people? That informs your strategy when you can be able to quantify qualitative information. That qualitative information has to include what is driving the behavior and the response that's given by the providers. And that's really a unique position that scientific, being a trusted scientific advisor would allow you to be able to do. Once you create that relationship and establish yourself, that is the type of information you want to be able to bring back.
I didn't think about it that way. I love that. And it makes so much sense.
The second part would be who's the audience, or who are the participants at the starting line, right? I think that's one of the things that you talked about maybe in one of the first questions. Is who are the participants that need to understand this information? Is it medical information? Is it your payer team? Is it your MSLs? Is it medical directors? Is it your cross-functional stakeholders? Is it your sales leads? Who's the audience that you need to share this information? Oftentimes it goes back to this whole thing of, I know what medical affairs, I know that they bring value, but what is it that they do? A lot of that is closing this loop, and it's with the right people at the table. So that's another thing that leaders really need to think about, is how are we being proactive with this type of information and sharing, and what the result is going to be. If we don't have that, what do we fall back on? We fall back on how many times have we engaged somebody? How many times were we out in the field? How long were our conversations, et cetera, right? So those are important. That's important information, but there's so much more opportunity to be able to communicate the value and really be that third pillar of the company's strategy, which is what medical affairs really should be, not just a supportive function.
I feel like you have strong feelings about this.
Tell me more, Mary.
Well, we can get to that another time. But, when I'm thinking about some of the people who have said, I thought this was a great insight, and they told me it's garbage, so, fundamentally as an insight, is it in the eye of the beholder, whether it's good or actionable? Where's the disconnect? If an MSL thinks that this is like an amazing insight that somebody should be able to do something with in relation to how the strategy is being rolled out, but the people in strategy say, no, we don't need that. It's just kind of an interesting perspective.
So it goes back to a couple of things. Number one, I wish I could see the example. I think that would be easier for me to be able to talk about this. But what I would say with this is the insight shared should have the opportunity to be actioned. Doesn't mean that it's always going to be action, but it does go back to the idea of reporting and sharing those types of findings across the teams. If you have an insight lead, for example, former organization I worked with, I know that there's an insight lead that actually schedules one-on-ones with each one of the MSLs and walks through the insights that they reported and showed, hey, this one was a really good one. Hey, this one, help me understand what this is. And it's more of a training type of thing of what the need is. In that scenario that you mentioned, was there a why that was added to it? Like, because of this? Was it aligned in medical affairs strategy? There's so many different questions that could be, but taking the time to really walk through the why and acknowledge those, I think, are important. I think you could do that if you had scheduled consistent meetings, whether it's a quarterly review, like, here are the different insights. This one came up. It was a great insight. Here's why we're not going to pursue this, whether it's not aligned to the business strategy. There's not enough data to really support this idea, whatever the information is, but being able to provide that feedback, it's still an encouragement to keep bringing that stuff forward, because it's an opportunity to move forward, but doesn't mean that that makes the most sense for the business at the time. I think that that's closing the loop though, and that's what's missing in so much of the insight process is we're not closing the loop on what was given initially, which leads to frustration. So we've got to do better at closing the loop. And there's technology that will help do that, I think, as well, too. I think that that's one of the biggest problems, and people shy away. Like I've even heard senior leadership before say, oh, we don't need to prioritize or put a metric around insights. And that drives me crazy because I feel like if you give clear direction of what those are, if you list key insight questions that align with a medical affairs strategy, those things will produce the results that you're looking for. And now you have different vendors that are out there that can help collate this information. You can utilize AI to be able to say, okay, what does this mean? What's the percentage? All these things are so manual right now. It's very difficult, and it's hard to invest headcount to focus just on insights now. So, so what can we do? How much would reporting help? I mean, I think it's essential, right? When you think about medical affairs, there's a clear understanding of pre-launch, the value that they bring, and launch. What do you do after 2 years from now? How are you really communicating that information? If you don't have these types of tools, it becomes very ambiguous. And then you risk, quite honestly, the reality of potential attrition and things like that, or making cuts in these areas that really don't need to be cut, but we can't communicate what we're doing really well. So I would say that's got to be a priority, is communicating, closing the loop, but you have to have something to help you close the loop. And I think that there's ways to do it now. This excuse of it's too hard to show medical affairs value is just not acceptable anymore. It's not acceptable.
Well, on that note of technology, that is actually my first question.
All right, let's do it.
So now we're getting into my own questions. So, I'm a slow AI adopter, but if we start talking about like data analytics, obviously it's very easy to run analyses on numbers of interactions, but can you use data and data analytics to is that a tool that's effective enough? You were kind of talking about it earlier, like, can you quantify a qualitative metric? And it's like the million dollar question. And I hear people say that you can, but I haven't been really convinced with the explanations of how.
Yeah, I think that there are some unique insights that can come that really move the needle in ways that are clear cuts, right? So when you think about certain disease states, for example, I can think of one that the VA had a policy that if they found out that you had this certain disease state, that you were all of a sudden your benefits were removed, right? So being able to report that and then share that with the medical director office, and then start partnering with patient advocacy, and then creating a white paper, and then being able to influence the VA to flip things around, that happened. And that was an amazing thing that really helped patients. That was a significant standalone thing. Those are few and far between though, right? And so when you go back to the whole thing around how much money am I investing in this resource? I mean, you think about field medical is over half of the expense of medical affairs, I would say, if not more for most organizations, because of the sheer number of people that are there. So are you just counting on some of these one-off insights that may or may not move? Or are you really being intentional in ensuring that more insights come? So there, again, it goes back to the data analytics. Is there a way to really kind of measure that? Probably not. That's going to be an individual thing when it's a one-off. What you can do is being able to search, like I know now you have AI that supports Microsoft Excel. I'm so thankful for that, because That is, my old boss bought me a Microsoft Excel for Dummies as a Christmas present one year, right? So, I mean, this is beautiful. I mean, you can, when you have this Excel spreadsheet that tells you all the insights, right? You can say, search this column and look for certain keywords, and it will pull up and it will tell you how many times that pops up, right? So then you can start being able to share some of that information in context. If your systems are set up, you can incorporate medical information. You can set up social listening, all these types of things. So it can be a multi-channel approach to understanding how things are resonating in the field and pulling those in to help inform your strategy. So data analytics certainly has a part. It's the quality that you have. And so there still is an end user that has to overlook some of this stuff as well too.
I was thinking about, you said this earlier about how, some people maybe they gather an insight from a KOL, and then they may hear the exact same thing from a handful of other thought leaders and neglect to enter that into Viva, which, I can see why they would think, oh, I already got this, so I don't really need to. But that's not like, to your point that you were making. I mean, the more people that say it, the more impactful it really is.
I mean, let's just put our scientific hat on it, right? So when we think about a powered study.
I didn't bring mine.
Well,
my scientific hat.
You got the MSL shirt on. You're kind of like, yeah, that's your superpower. So let's say that counts for today.
I'll go with that.
When you look at a study, I mean, what is more powerful, right? A study that has an N of 30 or an N of 300, right? When you get a response, right? Now, certainly, I'm not the analytics guy and things like that, but I think that we would all agree that the more something occurs and repeats, the more we have a clear understanding of, hey, we need to invest our resources in this area that we've learned. And so if we think about it in that way, and then but then it comes back to that whole 360 view, right? And worked with a medical director that really got great at this, having quarterly calls. And then even as we were going into launching out our next project for a certain therapeutic area, saying, hey, here is the insight. What we're about to do now comes directly as a result from what you've shared as part of your insights. We're going to focus on this population, and it's going to be around this topic for the next 6 months to truly understand this further, right? So that type of information is what I think the field medical team is looking for in ways, because it incentivizes them. They want to know that they're making a difference, right? They want to make impact. And I think that this is a way from an internal perspective to understand the impact that they're making. They can see it with their KOLs many times, and they try to communicate that internally, but then they don't understand what the impact is internally. So this is more of a reporting issue, right? And a communication issue than it is anything else.
Yeah. And it's basic psychology. It's positive reinforcement. Am I doing it right? Am I not? And that's my next question. I swear to God, this is not orchestrated, you guys. It just seems to be going that way. But so the next question I had was, so many of the comments and questions kind of seem born out of the frustration around people think that they've gathered these really great insights and they don't see anything come out of it. And if they are just not gonna give that feedback, what the field medical person could do to try to elicit that feedback, so that they know. Because sometimes, if you be control of your own destiny. So if you're frustrated that you're not hearing about your insight, maybe you need to be proactive and ask the questions so that you can be your own best advocate.
Yeah, I mean,
but again, it's a sensitive thing. Am I crossing the line by requesting this information? Am I just supposed to know? There is a little bit of that too, I guess.
So as leaders, it's incumbent on us to create an environment where questions can be asked, where you can seek to understand, where you can assume positive, all this stuff that we talk about from a servant leadership
Mhm.
component, right? It's more than just word speak, right? It's not a catchphrase. It really can shift how well your company and your team performs, right? So let's think of it in that way. Think about assuming positive intent, assuming that the medical strategy person, the medical director, wants to know this information, maybe has multiple things going on, or maybe there are 10 people on our team and there are 400 insights that they go through and have to collect. Maybe they missed it, maybe not. So what's the first thing is to assume that they want to know this information. Schedule a call, right? 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Hey, I'd love to connect with you about a particular insight that came regarding this, and share a few thoughts on how this might impact, right? So I think it's not only identifying problems or perceived problems that may be happening, but then bringing a solution, right, with that as well too. So I think this is a way. Here are my thoughts on why this insight could be impactful, and here's some ideas of maybe moving it forward. What are your thoughts, right? That is an approach where, at least I think in my experience, it's now there are some persisters out there, and there are including myself, on certain subjects that I feel like I am right, and if it doesn't go my way, then I'm going to get frustrated. That's a me problem I have to work on. But I think the majority of times, I just want to be heard, right? So I think that solves the problem as well too. Is, look, I would love for my idea to be vetted and approved and move forward, but I would also love the idea of just being able to share be in a space where my ideas are valued and appreciated. So creating that type of environment, it doesn't matter the outcome. As leaders, we have to be receptive and create that space and welcome and reward that type of feedback that's given to us. And I think it's incumbent on leaders that are developing as MSLs, whoever that is, to be able to take action and bring solutions to the idea as well too, and schedule that time, right? So I think that is an easy way to try to move things forward.
If an MSL collects an insight that is maybe like way different from anything anybody's ever seen, and they that an MSL could like be a part of whatever the strategic project is that was generated out of this person's interaction and their relationship with this thought leader. I mean, is that even something that's plausible?
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it, it's that, I mean, I don't know how prevalent that kind of an opportunity is in pharma in general.
I mean, the reality is there's not enough time in the day to be able to move a lot of things forward in leadership. There's so many different tasks. There's so many different phone calls. I can't, like, they're probably, I would say 60% at a minimum, if not more, of a workday, it consists of phone calls or meetings that you have to be a part of. A lot of things are inefficient. Some things are they're necessary, right? You have to do. I need others around me to help support and build from the ground up. Number one, I mean, think about all the things that does. Number one, it creates a sense of ownership. It goes back to whole servant leadership, right? So you create that sense of ownership. They start feeling valued. Career development. It gives exposure and opportunity for things beyond just their current role. If they're meeting the expectations of their current role and there's an opportunity to do this, let's figure out ways, whether it's just to be a part of meetings between the medical director and the KOL. Maybe that is their involvement. Maybe it's actually driving the process. I don't know. It all depends on the time and where that particular organization is. But absolutely, that is a key to retaining talent, and then all of a sudden building into the future as well too. It's like the law of diminishing returns. You can only do so much as a leader, and that the leader's job is not to do it all. We are not tacticians. We should be strategy and empowering the people around us to help bring something to life. It doesn't mean for us to do it all.
Thank you. And thank you for being on the hot seat today. It didn't even make you nervous. It really, really bothered me kind of, I think that, but this is your sweet spot. This is your jam. So I knew there was no need to bring anybody else on to ask you all these questions. And that's why you're just learning about these questions today. So no advanced knowledge of the questions, but great information.
Mary, this is something I've been passionate about since stepping into even just like a regional director role years ago. Is this whole the Tyranny of Metrics was that one book that I read that really shaped my thought process on this, and the design, knowing that most of field medical are type A personalities, very driven. They want to provide value as healthcare providers and find their role with this. They're eager to advance all of these things. And so when you ask these questions, I've been chewing on these for 5 or 6 years, and at a minimum, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm excited about the opportunity to help be able to communicate that in a clearer way and taking a shot at it. Right? You don't hit the shots that you don't take, I think. And so let's take some shots as leaders. And I think that the returns will definitely be worth it. The legacy is how we invest in others. And this is a tool that can equip us to do it. So that's why I'm passionate about it.
Well, I hope you have enjoyed this very sort of chill way that we did this, because next time you are on the hot seat, we're going to do it like Hot Ones. Have you ever seen Hot Ones?
No, what is that? Tell me more.
It's a YouTube series where the interviewer and the interviewee have hot wings, and they get progressively hotter, and it makes the people have a harder time answering the questions because their mouth is on fire. One of my favorites is with Gordon Ramsay. And then there's another one that I just saw with Lewis Hamilton. He's an F1 racer. And it was pretty good too. So next time I'm going to have wings delivered to your house.
Let's do it.
And we'll just eat a wing as questions go along.
Mango habanero. I think it's a great starting point from a heat
type.
It's a good layup, right?
Mango habanero. Habanero used to be like the hottest, and now it's I can't remember what the hottest one now. I mean, like we went to Carolina Reaper and all these other ones, and like they just keep making them hotter. So, but no, we're definitely going to do that next time.
Let's do it. I'll be sure to bring a gallon of milk as well too. So, Mary, thanks for taking time to ask some of these questions. You certainly know it's something that I'm passionate about, and I think our listeners are too. And so, I guess the question is, how do we move this forward? What's the so what behind this? What are we going to do with any of this information? Is there something that you can take from it to try to move something forward? I hope that that's the case, and can't wait to hear your feedback on how things go when you put things in motion. So remember that we don't develop in isolation very well as leaders, right? We must learn from one another, and that is our mission here on MSL Lead Chronicles. Thanks so much for continuing to be avid listeners and participants. We can't do it without you. We don't want to do it without you. We need each other. So until next time, lead well.